Welcome, everyone, to another episode of Legal Tech Week, the show where our panel of expert journalists and bloggers talk about the top stories in legal tech and innovation from the past week. Today is October 20th, 2023. I am Bob Ambrogi. I have a blog called Law Sites and a podcast called Law Next. We have a guest panelist joining us today, Kristen Galvey. Kristen, you want to say hello and introduce yourself?
Hey, everybody. It's good to, not see you. Bob's an amazing host. And we've gone back a few years. I'm editor and publisher of Corporate Counsel Business Journal. Our primary focus is on professional and personal development for legal executives that runs the gamut of law technology, legal operations, CLOs, everybody who's in the family.
And also have the Pinhawk publications, which are Jeff Brandt, who's an occasional columnist here, edits one of your publications there.
I know, but I don't like to brag.
Columnist. My brain is not working today. He's not an occasional columnist here. He's an occasional panelist here. Awesome. Well, thanks for joining us. And among our usual suspects here, Steve, you want to kick us off introducing yourself?
Sure. Hey, Steve Embry here again. I write the blog Tech Law Crossroads about legal innovation and legal technology and basically whatever the hell else I want to talk about. I'm happy to be here again.
And we're happy to have you. And Victor.
Hi, everyone. My name is Victor Lee. I am Assistant Managing Editor for the ABA Journal, covering business of law and technology, and I'm happy to be here too.
And last but not least, Stephanie.
Hi, I'm Stephanie Wilkins, Editor-in-Chief of Legal Tech News at ALM, and I feel like I have to say I'm happy to be here now. Otherwise, I'm the odd one out, but sure, I'm here.
So, I don't know, the various things to talk about.
We were all happy to be here, and we're all happy to be wearing glasses, as Stephanie pointed out before we started.
Aha, I didn't even notice that. The all glasses edition of Legal Tech Week. Lots of stuff to talk about this week, but one of the interesting things that happened over the last couple of weeks really was there's sort of a whole bunch of conferences that were all new this year, kind of representative of the fact that it sometimes feels like it's getting to the point where you could be going to a legal tech or legal practice conference anyway, just about every week of the year if you so desired to do that, and if you're a real glutton for punishment. But a bunch of us were just back from last week from Clio, and then I had gone last week to the KM and Innovation Conference, which I talked about a little bit on the show last week, which was the inaugural conference put on by Joshua Fireman and Patrick D. Domenico, but which was actually a response to a different conference that they used to help put together that then moved to Chicago. So they decided they needed to put on a conference in New York to bring it back to New York, I guess. And we talked about that a little bit last week because we did the show. I was on the conference floor, and I did write something about that over the course of this week. And I thought it was a really good conference. Actually, I thought they did a really good job, especially for a first conference. But by all measures, they sold out all the seats. They sold out all the vendors. They put on a good program with some really good speakers. So I thought that was a success. But both Stephanie attended a conference this week that was, I think, a first, right? For the one you attended or not? The women.
Oh, no, it's not.
I don't know if it's a conference, really. Yeah. It's not the first. No,
it's a very big conference, actually. It's like over 700 people this year.
Oh, I somehow was not aware of it.
The first time, well, because it's women's conference, probably. You weren't on their short list of people to attend.
Yeah, but I do read the news.
I know. But it was the first year. It was in New Orleans.
That's what's it called? The Women
Influence and Power in Law. It's actually really great. I could talk more about it, but yes.
Yeah. Okay. And Kristen, who's here joining us, was also at a first conference that kind of a response to another conference. I think maybe that's stretching it a little bit, but you were at the LegalOps conference that took place in Las Vegas, which was not called that. It was called running law like a business or something like that, or not that? That's not it.
I think that's pretty close to it. It was,
Running,
well,
yeah.
I'll share a little. It was
Tell us a little bit about it.
interesting. Well, Connie and Jeff were the primary backers of it, who were the original founders of Clock back in the day.
Right. Connie, Brenton,
they're-
and Jeff. What's Jeff's last name?
Frank, I can't pronounce it correctly. It's Frankie, Franke. And I've known them for years and years and years. And they are thought leaders in the legal ops space. The interesting part about that conference was the Women's General Counsel Network was a sidecar, like a companion to this conference. As a person in the press, I was banned from that part of it, which is okay. I don't know what dirty deeds they're gonna share. I said it's okay. But
Even though you have a publication for corporate counsel.
Well, they do, because actually our former colleague, Allison Hoffman, is a part of the Women's General Counsel Network and runs the New York chapter.
Okay.
And it takes 3,000 miles for me to see her.
This is the incestuous little world of AL, people who formerly worked at ALM, where Stephanie currently works. But Kristen and I worked there together. Victor worked there. Allison Hoffman, who you mentioned, used to be the general counsel of ALM. So a long list of people.
Well, and some of us worked there the last time Wasserstein owned it.
Right. Goes around, comes around.
Yeah, I think I was in the interregnum. I was like between the ownerships. So yeah.
Oh, you were there when it was like Summit or the other one.
Yeah, it was like some. Yeah, it was like either Summit or no, what was the other one? Start with an I. I don't remember. Yeah, it was some hedge fund.
Incisive.
Yes.
Incisive, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Incisive.
So we all have our little taste of the ALM experience. The conference was amazing. We run an ops conference ourselves. We had one, I think, 3 weeks ago, and I've been to Clock 1,000 every year, and we've been covering them since 2015. So it was an interesting juxtaposition in terms of it being, hello, children, people. It's an interesting conference in that one, it was not so much about consuming technology, and it was more about the long view of being influential in your company or your law firm, however you want to skin that cat. And a lot of legal ops executives, they look at the world in terms of we need to deploy certain technology versus getting buy-in. How are we going to do this? Also, how do I say this? Educate people who are not a part of legal, whether they're the CEO or the COO. So that it was really the long view of being an influencer. And I spoke with a number of people, including the sponsors. It wasn't it wasn't like going to Legal Week. It wasn't 1,000 people.
Yeah. Would the comparison be more like the Clock? How does this compare like the Clock, which is also focused on legal operations?
Well, they are, but they are mostly, my interpretation over the years has been the Clock conference is more about tools versus leadership skills and being strategic, and maybe that's changed or waned a wee bit, but I felt that this was really about how to be a part of the company versus being technical.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. I mean, I guess I had sort of had in my mind, and maybe this is speaking out of school, that in a sense this was because of the two organizers of this conference were a little estranged, I think, from Clock, that in part this conference was organized as a counter to Clock or alternative to Clock. Is that off base to think that, or?
I don't disagree with that. My sense, and I've, like I said, I've known Connie and Jeff for a number of years. This was like a legal operations 3.0, if that
Yeah.
makes sense, where it's not about what software to buy,
Yeah.
and more about how to be an influencer within the community. And the second part of that is always how to support the business units, which is if it's the sales team or procurement, how do you support them versus putting like orange cones around everybody?
Interesting.
But what do I know?
What do any of us know?
That's what I was just going to say. I don't think any of us knows very much.
We just report what other people say. That's our job. Well, so that's interesting. And Stephanie, I mean, did you want to just? It might be a good time to just talk a little bit about the Women and Influencers Conference as a kind of a contrast to that.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I agree with Colin's comment in the comments that, you know, I kind of wish some of these legal tech shows were more spread out. Like, if I was delayed, I got home at like 2 a.m. and I'm just wiped after 5 weeks of conferences. But yeah, Whipple, Women, Influence, and Power in Law. It's actually a really great show. I went last year in DC, but I had been in this job for about 3 weeks at a time, so I didn't know anything about anything, or I had no really comparison to make to other conferences. But this year, this is the first year it was not in DC. They moved it to New Orleans. It's going to be bouncing around to different cities. Like it'll be in Chicago next year, but not at the Hyatt. And I know there's another hotel. Who knew?
Well, where else could they possibly go?
I know. I will let you know. I was so excited for that.
And I know how disappointed you are.
I know. We all know I love the Hyatt. But no, it's like, so it's sponsored by our corporate counsel publication. So I mean, it is on paper, it is geared toward GCs and things like that, but it's really expanded a lot since then. I mean, you get law firm people. This year there was like more people from the legal tech world than ever before that I'd seen. And so there were some really good panels, and it really is great. Like I will admit that I'm the first one to be a little wary when someone's telling me there's a women's event, because, you know, I've been to too many things that are like fluffy and everything's pink and just really saccharine. And this was not that at all. It's very empowering. It's just women being honest on every, I mean, I went to a Gen AI panel. There's really high profile keynote speakers. Like we had Brooke Shields this year, but then there are also panels on, you know, women's health and things that no one talks about in the industry. But it really is like, it spans the whole gamut, and the panels they put together, the people on them are just so incredibly impressive. Like I moderated 2 panels. They weren't even about tech. One was about, you know, the balancing act and being present in work and life. And the other one was on global supply chains and sanctions, and had people from Estee Lauder and Coca-Cola on it. So it really is, you know, but it's just it's very well run. They have their own awards. I co-hosted the awards, and it's just everyone I know who goes for the first time says it's great. Like a couple of the women from Lex Fusion went this time. LegalOps went this time. You know, Case Text was a sponsor, so it's getting more traction in the legal tech space. And it's just really like, I don't know what their secret sauce is to making it so good, but they've done it really, really well. And that's
Awesome.
I'm not just saying that because it's an ALM conference. So. Yeah.
And did you see Brooke Shields' keynote? I was curious what she talked
He was
about.
great. Well, it was particularly interesting because, and so Heather Nevitt, it was a fireside chat. Heather Nevitt like navigated it really well, because since there's still the actors strike on, she wasn't allowed to talk about any movie or TV show she'd been in. She could talk about her one-woman Broadway show, but she couldn't talk about anything else. But so it was really a lot more about her, just her experience. So, I mean, she talked about her experience coming up in the industry. You know, she's 58 now and has been working since she was 11 months old. So she had a lot to say on just, you know, navigating and how it has changed for women over time and navigating the workplace, but also just, you know, she famously wrote that book about the postpartum depression. When Tom Cruise publicly attacked her, she addressed that. But it was just a lot about, you know, finding your voice. And now she's an entrepreneur and like going from having been controlled as a young person, her whole career from literally 11 months old to now being this powerful woman that's an entrepreneur, and like she's raising 2 daughters and just like taking over the business side of it, and, you know, not being apologetic and letting people walk all over you. And it was actually really, really good. Like I expected it to be good, but it was incredibly inspiring, and she's really smart. So it was great.
All right. Since none other of us were there, I guess we can't comment on it.
There was a man. It was the first year they ever had a panel of men, though. They did. They
all men, a manel?
Yeah.
Was it a manel?
A panel with a female moderator. But yeah, they purposely added one on allyship in the workplace, and the 3 men on it had, I don't know who they asked, but were specifically recommended by people who had found them to be a great ally and supporter through their career. So that it was interesting. It was at the end, but it was an interesting one.
This was kind of an interesting thing that happened during that KM&I conference I was at, because I was posting pictures to LinkedIn, and that conference was very diverse. I mean, there were far more, not far more, but probably, I think it was like 60% women to 40% men at the conference. The panels reflected that. But there was one manel at the conference, which it happened to be a manel because it was a client and an outside provider talking about something they had done together, and they both happened to be men. But I posted a picture of that and got all this feedback on LinkedIn about how too bad they're having manels at this conference, and I'll never go to that conference because it doesn't represent. Oh, wow. Yeah, and I, like, it was so weird because all of the I mean, several of the panels were all women. The keynote was a woman. I mean, it was a very diverse conference overall, and it was kind of strange that people on LinkedIn who weren't there picked up on this one photo to criticize the entire conference. But that turned into a discussion of whether, of the flip side of, you shouldn't have all male panels, but should you have all female panels, or is that also wrong? It was like this bizarre conversation on LinkedIn that totally distracted. And it was upsetting to some of the people who were there. This was happening while we were there, and some people were really offended by it, who were, you know, helping to organize the panels.
That's really interesting. I mean, because Whipple is a women's conference, so it's obviously all women's panels. Yeah. I don't know that men aren't allowed to go, but men just don't go. But they haven't had, you know, women. So this was a very specific men panel moderated by a woman. But apparently there still were, I mean, I heard rumblings like some people were like, why would they have a panel of men? I'm like, oh my gosh. It's 3 days of amazing things, and now they're talking about how men can help with allyship, and you're mad at that? Yeah. Like, and the people on it, like Patrick Fuller from ALM was one of them. And if anyone knows him, I know Nancy just said it in the comments, he's like one of the kindest human beings in the world. And I don't know how you could ever be mad at him on a panel.
Yeah.
So Bob, if I can, and Stephanie, I'll jump in on this because we're actually coming into our 5th annual women's conference, and we make a tremendous effort to try to, we just ran our 50 women to watch. And when we host our events, whether they're tech conferences or our women's event, we try to recruit men to join because they believe that they're not welcome. And my perspective is always that they should hear what's going on and be a part of it. I have one colleague who's spoken for us a couple of times, and it's informative of his perspective, how he deals with women in the workplace. And I think that it's not a sorority, right, Stephanie? Like, it's, you know, we're all in it together because we want to have the best workplace. And if we all just talk to each other, then that's crazy in my mind. Like, we all should be sharing. I also have a certain age group of children where we're dealing with pronouns. I'm not dealing with pronouns. My child isn't dealing with pronouns, but there's this whole pronoun business, which is super fun because everybody's just they in my universe. So I just want to interject that, you know, if we all work in silos, then it doesn't make for the best outcome.
Well, and I think your comment about the pronouns and, you know, people who are now, you know, non-binary, that's going to be an increasing issue in terms of it's a women's conference. Like I said, I don't think it's only women invited. And I mean, this conference started like 10 years ago, long before I was involved, but it has grown significantly over time. And I'm fairly certain, you know, the first initiative was a very small group of women getting together when women's voices were not heard a lot. And it's so popular that it's grown, and it's going to be, I mean, the fact that they had their first male panel, I mean, it's going to be an ongoing conversation of how these things look going forward for sure.
Yeah, well, next year, Victor and Steve, you guys with me, we'll crash the Women Influence and Power Conference.
Oh, I told you it's at the Hyatt.
At least hang
right?
out at the
Go to
bar.
Hyatt.
Especially if it's at the Hyatt. I wouldn't miss it.
Yeah, I mean, I'm already pretty well known at the Hyatt, so yeah, I don't know.
Pretty well known at the Hyatt. That's a interesting thought.
When I was leaving last time after whatever Relativity Fest, they were like, "Oh, we hope to see you again soon." I'm like, I have no doubt that you will.
No.
Like,
I know.
It would be even worse if they said, "We hope to see you again, Stephanie." Then you know you've been there too many times.
Your usual table, sir. I'm like, no, thank you.
it's like The Shining. Yeah, it's like
We
The
have
Shining.
usual room.
You have always lived at the Hyatt, Stephanie. It's The Shining.
God. No, I mean Tech Show has over the years been. I used to be at the Sheraton way back when, and then it was at the Hilton. It was the Hilton, right?
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it was at the Hilton. Yeah.
I actually liked the Hilton for it.
I liked it a lot at the Hilton too. Like I mean, I liked that it was nice and small and compact. Everything was sort of like within, you know, just like a few, but yeah, I guess they felt like they had outgrown it. And I mean, there was talk they might even move to McCormick Place, which is the huge convention center here in Chicago, but that didn't happen this year at least. So
yeah,
stay
or
tuned
next year. Yeah, yeah. No,
Well, for anybody who
I
doesn't-
know it's on the agenda. I mean, McCormick Place is a schlep for those of us who live in Chicago. So yeah, I don't know.
For anybody who hasn't had enough conferences, I know the Net Documents Conference is coming up this week in San Antonio, and on Sunday and Monday and Tuesday, I think here in Boston is the National Docketing Association, which is the group that represents all the people in law firms who deal with docketing and filing all the electronic court documents. And I'm actually going to be on a panel there on Sunday on talking about that North Carolina order that came down a while ago, the standing order from a judge saying you can't use any of these services like Pacer Pro or DocketBird or whatever. So we're going to have a panel on that on Sunday this week.
what's with Sunday conferences? I mean,
I know it, really. Right.
all in Boston too. Like, I'm like, why should the conference start? Like, not even just, oh, roll in and it's like a Sunday night reception. It's like, we have programming all day Sunday.
Yeah. Yeah.
I get to
I think
say
it
that?
actually starts Monday, and it's one of those things where on Sunday they've got like some pre-programs and stuff like that. I think that's the way it is. I think the thing I'm on is like a pre-program panel. I'm not going to the rest of the conference. All right. Well, moving on to some of the news this week and some of the stories this week. Victor, you had one that raised some interesting issues about using Google search. Want to talk about that?
Yeah, I guess first, well, first I'll mention that I think I put in there the thing about how the LSAC is eliminating the logic games, which made me really happy because I hated those things when I had to take the LSAT. They were the bane of my existence for like a few months.
Those are my favorite part.
Oh God, I hated those. Like I was working for a lawyer at the time when I took it, and I asked her, I was just like, do you use this stuff in law school? She goes, I used it in law school, but that's because I got married. And when I was in law school, and so I had to use it to like figure out, okay, well, I got to put my family at this table, but I can't put this person next to this person. I can't put these people at the same table as this table. So sure enough, when I was planning, when my wife and I were planning our wedding, that was when that stuff started coming back to me. So that's the only time in the last, however many years that I've used those logic games. So good riddance
They're
to
just
them.
trying to make it easier for GPT to pass the bar. That's all.
Yeah, it's a good riddance to them. But the story that I put was I'll put it in the chat for everyone. Basically, yeah, there was a decision in Colorado, which they refused to toss out evidence that was obtained through a keyword search warrant. So basically, I think they obtained a warrant requiring Google to disclose IP addresses of devices that are used that are conducted a specific search, like in a house, like related to an arson. So if you put the address in to search for to search online, they would then get the IP addresses of anyone who searched that address and then search them. And so, you know, I mean, you know, we've been hearing that like this kind of stuff is going to become more, you know, especially with GPT and those kind of tools. You know, these kind of things could become much more common. And I mean, it's not like a new thing. I mean, I think like Casey Anthony's case from several years ago, there was a thing about like she allegedly put in a Google query about like, I was like something about like relating to like how do you bury a kid or something like that. I could be misquoting that one, but like, I mean, these kind of keyword searches have long been considered to be, you know, part of the criminal, I guess, investigatory process. But now with, you know, with generative AI kind of like supercharging all that stuff and making people start to use it more, like I'm sure this topic is going to become much more prevalent in the coming years. And, you know, I guess in this case, they found that this person has searched for the home address 14 times before the incident. So I guess that was another thing that they pointed to, is like, well, nobody searches for an address 14 times, you know, unless there's some kind of connection, you know, to something. So
Apparently they've never used Zillow.
Well, yeah, or was it Spokane or any of those? Yeah, or no, yeah, like those type of yeah. I mean, so it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Obviously, civil liberties, and electronic privacy advocates are worried about this. And you know, I mean, because I mean, like, I mean, yeah, I mean, like, what happens if you're searching an address for like a house that you might want to buy, or a property you're interested in, or something. So, I mean, so it'll be interesting to see where this goes, and then with generative AI making it much more easier for people to kind of do this stuff, I imagine this will become a much bigger issue going forward.
What I understand, was the warrant just for like anybody who searched for this zip code? I mean, or were they? I mean, for the zip code, for the address, or were they specifying it to certain individuals that they suspected? You know?
Yeah, I don't really know how you could narrow it down. I mean, I think it would just be, yeah, like whoever searched like I'll have to take a look at it like more closely. I imagine that, because this stuff is done by IP address, right? It's not so I mean, even with the IP address, it's like, well, it could be anyone who uses that specific router, or anyone who, like, you know, leeches off that signal, or anybody who, you know, it's going to be tough to narrow it down anyway, because, you know, there could be like, you know, what if there's a computer that like a lot of people have access to, or what if it's like one of those things. So, but I mean, I guess, yeah, you know, you can make the argument that, look, like, if someone's going to search for a specific address 14 times, unless they live there, or unless it's, you know, some kind of, yeah, pending transaction or whatnot, it's not a natural, like, when was the last time anybody here, like, you know, did that for an address they had no connection to, or no, you know, like didn't have some kind of financial interest in, or proprietary interest. So you could argue that, yeah, no normal person would do that unless they're planning something. But then it's like, well, but what are they planning? Like, it's not, you know, just because they look for the address doesn't mean they're necessarily going to do something. It just, you know, in this case, it could have been the coincidence that this happened. So it definitely raises a lot of issues. I mean, I still think that there's a little bit of a missing link there, but I mean, who knows what other evidence they had.
I mean, to me, it seems like there's two different directions, and one makes more sense than the other. If there's an arson and you're trying to figure out who did it, and looking at everyone who Googled that address, that's really broad. But if you have a Casey Anthony who you think is highly suspect, and you're like, what did she look for? oh, she looked up foolproof suffocation, that seems like a more directed route than just being like, let's try to find anybody out there who Googled this neighborhood, you know?
Yeah, that's the scary part. I mean, at what point do you become a suspect just because you
Right.
Googled something, and how many times you have to Google it to make you a suspect?
Yeah.
It's a very weird thing.
Well, I mean, I feel like all of us have joked like, oh, I'm on some list now for doing this search, but apparently we might be.
No, we haven't all joked that.
Well, that's how they got. Well, that's how they got Menendez. That's how they got Bob Menendez, right? When he typed in how much is a kilo of gold worth or something like that. Because I mean, nobody's gonna type that in unless I mean, yeah, unless you have a reason to, right? I mean, I'm not gonna be like, hey, how much is a kilo of gold worth, just theoretically.
But to me, I mean, see a lots of mischief that could come from this. I mean, particularly with all the vigorous attempts to penalize abortion providers and people who get abortions to that effect. I mean, so if you live in Texas and you Google a abortion clinic in a state where abortion is legal, does that make you assess? I mean, I don't know. It's kind of, the whole thing sounds a little creepy to me.
Right. Yep. Sounds pretty creepy to me.
I guess in this case they actually hit a dead end with their investigation. They had no leads. So then they used the reverse keyword search, and they found like during like a 2-week period leading up to the arson, there were 5 IP addresses that had searched for that specific address, and then they used that to narrow down the suspects. So
Interesting.
It's also a reminder that Google knows everything about us.
Yep, and they'll
That's
turn
for
it
sure.
over. So I mean, they may talk a good game, but they'll turn it over just like everybody else will.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm going to jump to the story that I had this week, because I thought it was kind of significant news, which is the launch by vLex, aka Fastcase, or the merge of vLex and Fastcase, of their new legal research tool that they've kind of been talking about right since the time that of the merger back in March, whenever that was. But right at the time that they merged, they said, well, this is going to be powerful in terms of kind of creating this data set that could really drive some powerful generative AI legal research tools, given that vLex has, they claimed, the largest international set of primary law materials from over 100 countries and multiple languages around the globe. So this week they rolled out the first iteration of this. It's their generative AI legal research answer, I guess, to Casetext Co-Counsel and some of the other ones out there, and it's actually built on this Vincent AI platform that vLex had already developed a few years ago, but it's from what I've seen of it so far, I have not been hands-on with it, but I've had a couple of opportunities to see it demoed in a couple of different contexts, and it's still in beta in a lot of ways, but it's pretty cool, I thought. And I mean, it addresses, I mean, the basic model is that it's kind of got like 4 main skills, and one of the skills is simply answer a legal question, kind of like what Co-Counsel and some of the other ones do. Another one is to build a legal argument. So you can kind of put in a proposition. Whoops, we just lost Kristen. Put in a proposition, and it will, build an argument around that based on actual cases and statutes and regulations and whatever else. And then it also has this pretty powerful ability to create multi-state or multi-country surveys of the law. You can, do a 50-state survey of the law, something that could take hours, if not days, to do. This will do it in a couple of minutes. And so it's pretty cool. And a couple of the nice things about it is that it gives you, when you give it a question, like it'll give you the answer in the form of a legal memorandum, where it gets pretty detailed. I mean, it gives you the quick summary answer, but it also has a memorandum that kind of breaks through the applicable case law, applicable statutes, this and that, and even talks about some of the sort of the other sides of the issue, the negatives of the issue, the things to watch out for, be concerned about. And it also gives you, of course, all of the, over as you're looking at this on the left-hand side of your screen, you're seeing on the right-hand side of your screen all the actual source documents that it's basing its conclusions on. So of course, you're always able to go in and check for yourself that it's not hallucinating and not making something up. And it even gives you, as it's showing the source documents, kind of a little quote right from the most relevant part of the source document, so you can see that as well. So they've done a good job with it. It's very much in beta, you know, I think it's kind of maybe helping to kind of set a new bar for how generative AI can be used in legal research. I also, just to kind of jump to something else that was in the news last week, thought it was kind of interesting that they put this out there, because as I said, one of the skills is it can help you build an argument. If you didn't happen to notice it last week, there was a story in the news of the Fugees, the former Fugees star. I forget his name now. Pras Michel, who is suing. He was convicted in federal court of what was it, money laundering? I forget what he was convicted of exactly, but he filed a suit last week against his former lawyer. Where's the story? I thought I had it right here. Here it is.
Mhm.
In which he is claiming that his former lawyer, he got ineffective assistance of counsel because his former lawyer relied on an AI technology to help craft his closing arguments in the case, and that by relying on a company called iLevel, which I had never even heard of before, iLevel AI, I think it is, helped him create his closing arguments in the case, and that Michelle is alleging that because the lawyer used AI, relied on AI, I guess, to deliver these closing arguments, that the lawyer delivered ineffective assistance of counsel. Seems to also be an allegation there, which seems to be maybe more critical to all of this, that the lawyer might have had a financial interest in the technology that he used, and that the lawyer might have wanted to be able to use this technology so that in this trial, so that the lawyer would then be able to go out and talk about it as a tool for marketing this product. I'm not clear whether that association was drawn or not, but so on one hand we have Fastcase's new product saying we can build arguments for you, and on the other hand we have somebody suing saying if you use AI to build your arguments, it's ineffective assistance of counsel. So I don't know where that leaves us.
Well,
Sorry, go ahead.
well, I was gonna go. I think there's a big, in the Fugees case, a big thing that people are sort of glossing over is when this happened. Like the news just came out now, but the trial at the time was in like 2018, 2019. So if they were using Gen AI from 2018 or 19, like that's not what's being used now. And even in it, it said it was the people using it claimed it was the very first instance of AI being used in a trial. So it did seem very like stunty, or like they really did want to push this. And like it's not like they were using GPT-4 to do this. They were using maybe at that time like what was out, GPT-2 or GPT-3, which shouldn't be used.
Not in
And
it's
not even really clear that he knew they were doing it either. So I think, I mean, yeah, maybe just G. Yeah, so I mean, I think that's a big thing. I think it's a little bit of a red herring about whether or not these tools should be used, which is a valid discussion to have, but I don't know that in this case it would be the good argument for the use of them even generally based on the tools they were using. It just happened to be that the story broke now, but like if you go on I went on the website of that company and they say things like we were GPT before GPT was cool, and they like that really is what they were pushing. I'm like, but the tech wasn't there yet. I mean, it wasn't reliable yet. So it's a weird flex. In my opinion.
Well,
go
ahead, Victor. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, there are a few interesting things about this. The first on an unrelated note, this lawyer David Kenner, he's a fascinating character. He helped found Death Row Records, and he was like sort of their legal like consigliere for a long time. Like whenever anybody got in trouble for take your pick. I think he represented Suge Knight on all of his cases. He represented Snoop Dogg on his murder case. He represented all these guys. And there have been allegations that he funneled some money and did some stuff. So this guy's a fascinating character in his own right. So I definitely think there's more to this than that. But the other thing, yeah, it's kind of like, because on the one hand, it's kind of like, well, it sort of sets up the whole conceit about this whole idea of whether or not AI is there to help lawyers or to hurt them, because the idea that a lawyer would use generative AI to help them craft, to help them be more efficient, to be more to be able to craft things more quickly and work smarter and that kind of stuff, that would seem to be an effective use. But if the argument is, well, I expect my lawyer to come up with some bespoke closing argument that they have to spend a lot of time on and come up with to sway the jury, and coming up with some cookie cutter stuff from AI is going to reflect badly on me and badly on my case, and therefore it's ineffective. It sort of cuts against sort of like what the whole point of what these tools are supposed to accomplish. So yeah, it's sort of like what's that balance? Because it's like, well, did he use it because he felt like he needed some help in an area and that only AI could help him with, or did he use it because he was lazy and didn't want to craft an argument that might have helped his client?
Well, and I think the third one is they really wanted the attention too. They were boasting it was the first use of AI, so that seemed like a third impetus. Sorry, Steve, I didn't mean to cut you off.
Oh, that's okay. I just kind of wonder, how would you ever show causation in a case like that? I mean, so it would be, what is it, a better or worse closing argument than what the lawyer would have done on his own? And irrespective of whether it was better or worse, did that, like most cases, turn on the facts, right? So it's hard to say that using AI caused the case to be lost and the representation not effective. I also was thinking about our friend in New York and who was sanctioned by the judge for citing cases that didn't exist, whether he could face a similar lawsuit by his client down the road. So I don't know. It's kind of weird.
So if I may,
just to be clear though, the trial was in 2023. It was in March of 2023. So it wasn't that far back in terms of AI technology. But
oh, maybe it was just filed earlier. Maybe
it was filed in 2017, but it was went to trial this year. Yep.
Okay, got it.
So I'm gonna hop in, and I apologize because I have bad timing and eyesight. But about 3 weeks ago, I moderated a panel on Gen AI, and I just want to interject this part in, which is the base of knowledge for the AI is the most concern that I heard, which is whether you're dealing with contracts or you're a law firm, how you're sourcing that content and the privacy related to it. How smart can your AI be if you're limited in your capabilities was a big part of the discussion that we had. And I'm just throwing that one out there because we all have contracts. My kids have contracts, for Pete's sake. But how you make your AI intelligent may not be within the parameters. So one of the topics that came up was around intellectual property. So if you are a law firm or an organization that's bifurcated, you may not be permitted to mix that salad, so to speak. Like you can't look at everything across the board, which makes your AI a little bit less intelligent.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think part of also just, I mean, in this specific case, again, I go back to the point that Steve said, how can you prove causation? I mean, there does, I'm just trying to scan through the complaint and see if I can see it. I thought there was an allegation that this guy, in fact, has a financial interest in the company. I mean, that seems to really, if he didn't disclose that to his company and he used that product in some way, and and was using it so that he could market the product or have a case to, use as a case study or something, that takes it to a whole other level. Again, it's not,
Yeah. Although that
the
would be
problem there is
I would-
not the AI, it's the lawyer, again, doing
yeah,
something
I
wrong.
think that would be a kind of a different kind of claim. Actually,
Yeah.
it's more of a ethical sort of not diligently and ethically representing your client more than
Well,
you
yeah.
caused me to lose the case.
To be fair, they obviously put the AI in the headline, but it's like the document, the file for the complaint or for the pleading about this or the appeal is like 113 pages long. So I haven't even I mean, there's clearly more than just they use this tool.
Yeah.
Bad
Well,
lawyer.
there's a
Sorry.
tool you can use, Stephanie. Chat GPT will summarize it for you.
Yeah, I haven't gotten to that yet. I know. Or vLex. I do
Yeah.
want to say though, I mean, the vLex tool I thought was very cool when I saw it.
Although I have to wonder, what are these big law firms going to do with their summer associates now that vLex can do that? I mean, that was always the task that you threw to the summer associates: go do a 50-state survey, and
Oh my gosh.
you have
Right.
something to do between parties.
Right. Oh, I forgot to mention the other thing on the vLex tool. Or did I mention it? The translation issue? I mean, you can do a query and it'll go out and search across law in other languages, bring back the results, and it'll translate your query, go search other languages, translate back into English, and bring back the results in English. I mean, right now it's just Spanish is the only other language, but they plan to expand that to multiple languages and across their entire database.
So Spain is one of the 4 jurisdictions they have currently in it, but you can search Spanish law in English too, though, and you can search English law in Spanish, and yeah, it's pretty impressive. I thought it was interesting because, so I mean, I guess Ed was telling me he had run a demo with you, Bob, where they looked at an issue that was, should public hearings be public record or something like that. It was a demo, something he had done with you, and the answer cited, I mean, with all the backup, was very, very clear that what the answer to this question was. And I was like, well, so just to play out devil's advocate, what does it tell you if you have to argue the other side? You have to build the argument for the other side. And I was like, well, let's do it. Well, we're talking about other stuff. And it took 5 minutes only to do it. And it was very clear. It was it was like, here are the few different ways things have been distinguished, but really this is like, you are on the losing side of this argument. I mean, it said it more legal briefy than that, but you are not on the good side here. Here are possible ways you could try to distinguish things, but the law is pretty clear against you. So it didn't try to give you something, to make you happy. It didn't do that. Oh, we'll give you a brief because you want a brief that says this. If it doesn't say that, it didn't say it. And so I thought that was important.
Yeah, actually, the interesting thing about the demo that demo that Ed is talking about was he and I together, because we wrote this little query into it, but we misphrased the query, I realized after the fact, so that it was for sort of ambiguously written in terms of how it should have been written. And yet the Victor AI picked up on what it was we were trying to ask and gave us the answer to what it was we thought we were asking but didn't artfully ask effectively. So that was even more impressive. I thought it made up for our lack of language skills or something.
Right.
So anyway. All right. Well, I know we're running short on time. We got a couple more stories. Steve, you've got the
NoFakes
a title for your new T-shirt, I think.
Yeah, this was a bill that was introduced by 4 senators, and our friend Doug Austin had a story on it. The bill is called Nurture Originals, Foster Art, and Keep Entertainment Safe Act, otherwise known as NoFakes. And Doug in his article said, figure it out on your own. But I picked this because it sort of demonstrates the difficulty that we're going to have with a lot of these deep fakes. The definition that they use of what a deep fake could be is a newly created computer generated electronic representation of the image, voice, or visual likeness. And I immediately thought about the Google new Pixel camera that can take your frowning face in a picture and turn it into a smiley face. And, is that a newly created visual image? I don't know. The other thing was apparently this was referenced as something that would apply only to musicians, singers, actors, those kind of people. Although when I read through it, it didn't seem to be limited to that, which was a little troubling. And they got a lot of loose language in here, like readily identifiable and nearly indistinguishable, which, they're just great things for lawyers to argue about. There's a lot of exclusions, like for news and sports and documentaries, criticism, all the sort of usual sort of stuff that you see. It doesn't say fair comment, but I think that's included. And it's also got a incidental and de minimis exception, which again is just like, okay, we can argue about that in courtrooms from now till doomsday.
That's like an issue spotting exam. Like,
yeah. And interestingly enough, it doesn't have an exclusion for video games. And I've sort of thought about, that would seem to be an area where this could come up. Really, kind of one of the funny things about it, of course says, okay, this is a property right that you have, and you can license it to others to use, but you can only license it to others if you A, do it in writing, and B, are represented by a lawyer. Sounds like, oh, this is a great little, great lawyer's relief act. You can license it. Victor can license his license, but only if he hires Bob to represent him to do it. So it's kind of funny. And it's like a lot of things, a lot of these kind of statutes, there is no criminal penalty. There's only a civil liability starting at $5,000 and up for each violation. But the really interesting thing, and kind of a thing that was troubling, is there's no defense spelled out in the proposed legislation for unknowingly using one of these sort of deep fakes. And that can be kind of troubling, because by their very nature, they're hard to know if they're fakes or not, right? So if you inadvertently used it and didn't know it, are you going to now be hit with a lawsuit? But in any event, I think none of us have to worry about this bill at all, because as we all know, no legislation is going to pass the House for the foreseeable future in any event. So we're pretty safe. And the last thing I'd like to point out about deep fakes is this whole show, I've been looking at the ceiling fan behind Stephanie, and it appears to go in one direction most of the time, but then it appears to reverse itself.
It really does, right? I know.
Go back in the other.
Yeah, it's really trippy. Like, it's, yeah.
I'm just a glitch in the matrix, y'all.
But anyway, I thought it was
what I was going to say is that they should use this to create an AI Speaker of the House. Therefore,
right.
They could
Avatar.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Kristen's got this sort of cosmic lighting going on. Also, I don't know if you can see that. It's like it looks like you're being bathed in light from up above or something.
Anyway,
I'm just hiding from my dogs right now.
I didn't mean to make fun of what appears to be an effort to do something with these, and it's a very troubling problem, as we've all talked about. But it does kind of show that creating some liability or a statute around this is going to be hard to do, and just because of the nature of it and the fact that it's constantly changing anyway. So
when you said we're not going to have to care about it, I thought you were going to say because none of us are famous enough to be deep faked.
Well, I'm certainly not. You guys may be.
I don't know. I think Bob is. Bob's famous enough.
Totally. Deep fakes all over the place. But I mean, what about the First Amendment here? I mean, obviously there's going to be some First Amendment protection for at least creating satire or something, maybe using deep fakes. I mean, I don't know exactly how.
Yeah, there is
that's in the statute.
Yeah, satire, comedy, and I mean, in many respects, you start reading through the exceptions, and they kind of swallow up the whole thing. But,
I'm sure it's more like because I'm sure Hollywood probably threw their weight behind it. I'm sure this is probably more to stop people from making movies with like using these people's images without compensation or without their authorization and whatnot. Yeah. I'm sure that's the main thing driving this, nothing like political.
Oh yeah, I don't think there's any doubt about that. But they weren't very careful, and I'm not sure how you would craft something that could only apply to like famous people. I don't know. It's a drafting problem, really, when you think about it.
Yeah.
I'll put the link to Doug's article in the notes.
I did. I put it in there.
Oh, you did.
So
Okay, thanks.
so they can do deepfakes of us because we're not famous. They just can't do a famous people.
Yeah, and I don't
we're
know
not
about the rest
actors,
of you, but I'm definitely not a singer, so I don't have to worry about that part either.
All right. Well, Stephanie, you had another story. I don't think we're going to get to it today because we are about out of time here, but maybe we can
Sorry,
save it for
Stephanie.
next week. Or...
I took your spot. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, you didn't. I talked about Whipple and Fastcase. It's fine. No, I don't really, I mean, it's very short story anyway, but it was just non-AI for once. I picked it. So Kirkland, apparently they rolled this out in May, but they just decided to make it public now. They had a tool that let me get it right. It is called SideTracker that their own investment funds practice group developed for use by other members, like other investment funds attorneys. So they bypassed outside vendors and their own internal IT department and created, it was like a purely lawyer created tool to help their own department do it. And it's just, I don't know, it was just notable because you don't hear a lot of, I feel like everything we've been hearing out of big law lately has been chatbots. And so this was just completely different and just, I don't know. I thought I'd be the non-AI person for once on this panel.
Sounds good.
More proof that I'm a deep fake at the moment.
So anymore, that's kind of like being a non-lawyer, non-fiction AI. Bad joke, sorry.
Is it? I mean, it is interesting when you hear about law firms doing anything. Well, that didn't come out right. I was going to say anything innovative. They do innovative things, but when they're doing things, when sort of out of a practice group or something like that emerges a need for a particular tech, and they develop it. There was at that KM seminar last week. There was some people from Gunderson who we already know have developed their own GPT thing, but they were also talking about another project they had where they realized that the lawyers were all kind of getting sort of inundated. Lawyers in their labor and employment group were kind of getting inundated with incoming requests from clients and all sorts of questions about this and that. And the lawyers, the head of the practice group, had kind of heard about how tech companies have these ticketing systems and said, well, can't we just get a ticketing system for legal advice? And they went around and took one of those sort of tech ticketing systems and adapted it for their practice group. That was a kind of a cool thing to do.
Smart, yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, nobody knows what your area needs more than your area. So if you have the ability to do it yourself, that's awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, Kristen, you survived a full hour hanging out with us here today. Appreciate you doing that, and your dog and children and everybody else survived as well, as they made various cameos during the course of the show. But we're
I have
glad
a
to have
spare
you.
child and a spare dog if anybody wants one.
No, thanks.
Been there, done that.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm down to 2 dogs and down to 3 kids in the house right now. So hey, it's like I'm winning. Me and Charlie Sheen, we're winning.
Okay.
Thanks for having me, Bob.
All right.
Thank you all for being so gracious.
All right.
I'm a frequent flyer as an observer, so I hope I brought a little something to the table.
You did. Thank you very
You did,
much. We'll have
indeed.
you back sometime. All right. Thanks to everybody. See you all next week. Same time, same place. Have a good week.
All right.
Right.
Thanks, Bob. Have a great weekend, everybody.